This is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.
And welcome. Here we go. It is the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Yours truly, Joe Trahan, with producer extraordinaire Andrew Cely. It's another week. Believe it or not, it's February already. I think on February 1, as a TV person, you have to say, I can't believe it's February 1 already.
It's gone fast.
But it has. And thank goodness. Interesting topics, thanks to many people saying many interesting things happening that you would never suspect. And, of course, the Super Bowl's coming up, too, so we got tons to talk about. What you got prepared for us?
Well, I mean, a snub, a jersey retirement, 49 points, and a rant. So we got plenty to get into. Let's get right into it with What's on the Show.
Here's What's on the Show, sponsored by NFM.
It was a week to remember for the Mavericks as they retired Mark Aguirre's jersey, brought back the 80s on the court as well with the #1 overall pick, scoring 40-plus points and still finding ways to lose. We'll break down Jason Kidd's comments from Saturday night, Bill Belichick getting snubbed by the Hall of Fame, as aforementioned, Super Bowl predictions on the way, and it's the return of no fence riding with a focus on the future of GOAT conversations. That's what's on the show. Now, who's on the show, Joe?
All right, a couple of our favorites, of course, the one and only Mark Engel from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, our own Mike Leslie. It's going to be fun, freewheeling, and here we go. And let's get started with the one and only Jason Kidd. Just lighting it up on a Saturday night. Wow. Mac, when you saw what Coach said, what was your first reaction?
This is not the first time he's kind of fired back at the media that has dared criticize him in the past for any number of decisions. I got to tell you, the idea of putting the ball in Cooper Flagg's hands to be a point guard, I don't hate it. This entire season is gone. Anything that they do in terms of wins and losses, that's gravy. This entire season is entirely about Cooper Flagg's development. So whatever they need to do to make him an even better player for next season, I'm all in favor of it. And if that means they have to eat their vegetables and take some turnovers and some bad decisions to get him acclimated to being a primary ball handler or even a secondary ball handler, I'm all for it. So while I know sometimes this has some ugly moments to it, if it's going to make him a better player for next season, go forth.
And listen, we've already seen the improvement from Cooper Flagg with some of the decision making, even with his handles, right? Even with some basic skills in an NBA environment, playing at that speed and against that competition. We've already seen some of the improvement, and so my thought process has evolved a little bit, especially because of the record and because you don't have a healthy Anthony Davis, and we're not sure when Kyrie's coming back and all that stuff. You got to give the kid all he can take and even more to put as much pressure on him as you can to let him grow. And here's the thing. Unlike a lot of NBA players, it is obvious to me that Cooper Flagg does not mind hard coaching. He doesn't mind. You could just tell by looking at Mom watch the game that this kid has been coached thoroughly his entire life. His mom, absolutely into it. Dad played as well. So I think you need to use all of those things that are in your arsenal to try and pull the best out of him as soon as you can. Mike, what's your take?
I think, first of all, I'm with Mac. I don't personally have a problem with the idea of playing Cooper at the point guard position. And I think that dovetails nicely with the fact that I'm not sure Jason Kidd directed his vitriol at the right people. If you go back and listen to the press conference, the question that was asked to him, one, in an extremely polite way, not about anything that individual reporter had written or said, but about national reporters and pundits talking about this talking point. So he's kind of going off and ripping into a bunch of people in the room that are going, I didn't write that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And, exactly. And he was kind of shrugging like, this ain't me, bro. And then I think there's also an element here where regardless of who it was directed at and whether it landed at the feet of the proper people, where his just kind of callous disregard for anybody who didn't play the game at the level that he did is something that we've seen and heard from players and coaches at various times through history. And it's ridiculous. The idea that you can't have an opinion or you can't have an opinion that is valued unless you played the game like Jason Kidd did is bollocks. And we've continually gone down this path for no reason whatsoever. Why I went down an English path just now, I don't know. And Andrew, your reaction is warranted. I'm not sure why that was the word that came into my mind in the moment.
Well.
But what are we doing? Like this idea that nobody can have an opinion unless you played the game the way that Jason Kidd did is ridiculous.
I think to kind of echo that point, the voice that stuck out the most to me about criticism was, night one, Charles Barkley at halftime saying you should not be putting the ball in this kid's hands this early. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have looked at Flagg and his development this season and still have that lasting memory from that first game and use it to kind of color what's really transpired over the last 3 weeks, which has been a renaissance of his game. And I think that's unfair to him. I think it's unfair to Kidd, but at the same time, I don't fault Kidd for trying to balk at that, because I do think a lot of Flagg's success has come from that early element of trying to understand where the game flow is, and now he better understands how he fits into it, Joe.
Well, I think the other thing about this entire issue and this scene that we were given was Jason was just completely teed off at the refs, right? He called them by name. He probably knew the fine was coming. I don't know if he just said, you know what? I'm just going to get it all off my chest. Right now, I'm tired of it, because that wasn't directed at the people in the room. It was directed at some national pundits, and it was kind of one of those you people kind of rants, right? Which are never a good thing, mind you, right? So I think that was a big part of it. I suspect that there's going to be an apology sometime soon, because while Jason may feel that way, and he's expressed it before, I do think he is willing and understands the job that we have to do as journalists. I do. All right, so let's leave that there, because I don't want to end this segment without talking about the great Mark Aguirre and how cool Thursday night was. Mac, I'm going to let you go first as the senior member, and I know you weren't around for all that, but still, your window into what Mark Aguirre meant to the Mavericks and vis-a-vis what that night meant to Mark Aguirre.
It was great to see. He was their first superstar player. And people forget, for good reason, that when we talk about great NBA players of the 80s, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, those are obviously the first three, Isaiah Thomas. Mark Aguirre was just right below that group of players. And if you remember, there was a huge Sue commercial, the first of its kind, and Mark Aguirre was in that commercial with those players that I mentioned, along with Kevin McHale and some other ones. Mark Aguirre was that first guy. No disrespect to Orlando Blackman or some other, Roy Tarpley, unfortunately, who's off the court issues, he never escaped those. That was going to be such a great team. And Mark Aguirre was the face of that great team that pushed the Lakers to Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals, I believe in 86 or 87. And they were never the same again. The franchise was never the same again. But that era, the first era of great Mavericks basketball, Mark Aguirre was that guy. And to see him come back in the fold and to be welcomed by the franchise and to be a part of this again is great. It is. The fact that the Mavericks are making some effort with the fan base, with old Mavericks, to try to make up for the disaster that was this time a year ago when they traded Luka Doncic. And it's nice to see, it's neat to see his number hanging in the rafters where it belongs. That's a nice night. It really is. The part that concerns me, Joe, is that with a younger fan base, or any fan base, anybody over to the age of, anybody born in 19 on, they probably don't know who Mark Aguirre is. And that's no disrespect to Mark. Sports fame is generational, and it's nice to see it happening, but it doesn't fix the bigger problems of this franchise, and that is the result on the court. Nonetheless, a great night for the Mavs and Mark Aguirre.
It's a great point, because going into that night, I realized how many people just don't know of the greatness that Mark Aguirre had. And the other thing is, from a personal standpoint, Mark's been through a lot of health issues, and for him to get his flowers, and that's why it was part of the reason why it was so absolutely emotional, because he kind of stared some things in the face, and it brought a better reality to what he had done and what he had been through, and that's why it meant so much. Mike, what stood out to you?
What stood out to me was all the people that showed up for him, because they knew what it was going to mean to him. The fact that Isaiah Thomas was there, the fact that so many people that had connections to him and the city of Chicago made the trip down to be a part of this. It was very clear just from who he invited or who somebody close to him expressed to them, hey, this would be cool if you come out for this. It was very, very important to Mark Aguirre. And I think the fact that it was important to Aguirre shows a lot about how far this relationship has come over the course of a long period of time, but it's nice that we're here now.
Isaiah Thomas said it. Those bad boys championships do not happen without Mark Aguirre. That was the line of the night. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Much more coming up. We're talking Hall of Fame and Super Bowl. Keep it here. It's the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
Today's headlines, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers.
Congratulations to Carlos Alcaraz on winning the Australian Open. He defeated Novak Djokovic in 4 sets, denying Novak's bid for 25 Grand Slam titles. This is Alcaraz's 7th career title, and he is the 9th man ever to complete a career Grand Slam, winning all 4 majors. All right, put a pin in Alcaraz for a moment. We're going to touch on that a little bit later on in No Fence Riding. But let's get back to some NFL news. Obviously, the big headline this week was Bill Belichick getting snubbed by the Hall of Fame. Joe, your initial thoughts and how have things settled now over the last couple days here?
Listen, it's pretty simple for me. Epic, systemic failure for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There has to be change. It has to be immediate. The way that the voting is conducted has been proven to be inadequate. It needs to change right now. They don't need to wait. By the time they vote on Hall of Famers again, I think they should do it differently. I think the first thing they should do is expand the pool of voters so that a small amount of people can't make such an awful decision that looks bad for everyone involved with the Hall, and as the great Troy Aikman said, everyone who is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Change it now.
Mac?
Agree. I think this is something that started long time ago. And if you look at the specifics of how this happened, it wasn't so much that Belichick didn't deserve to get in, but it was how the senior candidates are lumped in with the coaching candidates. And you can only put in a certain number of people. That's really flawed. And, you know, I have covered Hall of Fames before. I'm a baseball Hall of Fame voter. There's no right way to do this. You're inevitably going to screw something up. But the Football Hall of Fame, to me, is probably the most dysfunctional because it started so small and it remains so loyal to those traditions that started decades ago in the face of a growing popularity, not only in the game, but in the Hall. And you have voters who would rather die than give up their chance to vote on the Hall of Fame. And in the process, a very flawed process, finally is getting its day in the sun where everybody involved can say, without any equivocation, that guy's a Hall of Famer and this process stinks.
To put a button in that real quick, for Bill Polian to say he was only 95% sure whether or not he voted, time out, because again, that process real quick, it's 5 names and you have 3 votes for those 5 names. And then you tell me you're 95% sure. With all due respect to Bill Polian, he should never vote again on the Hall of Fame. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Just to kind of piggyback off of Mac's point that it's getting its day in the sun. In this particular circumstance, the sun's going to prove to be a disinfectant, or at least it needs to, because this process does need to get shifted around. And it is a byproduct. Mac, your former colleague at the Star Telegram, Shereen Williams, who is one of the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters, our Arnold Payne went out and did some really good work on Friday and talked with both Shereen as well as Calvin Watkins, who is a voter that is based here in Dallas as well at the DMN. And Shereen talked about how the current process that I believe only went into place last year was a byproduct of some of the comments from Deion Sanders a few years ago about how many people were getting into the Hall of Fame and the fact that there needed to be an upper room and there's too many. And the Pro Football Hall of Fame listened to their members, in particular Deion, but he wasn't alone in this chorus of saying it's too easy to get in. Too many people are getting in. So they made it harder. And now here we are with somebody like Bill Belichick, who plainly deserves to get in, not getting in. It's lunacy for him to not be in the Hall of Fame and for him to not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. If he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, no coach in the history of the league is, save for maybe Vince Lombardi, if you want to have that one argument as far as who the greatest coach of all time in football is. He's in that conversation, and he's part of a 2-person conversation. it's insane that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. And it does speak to how much apparently it again needs to change. The process needs to change.
Mac, this isn't directed at you, but I used to think that the baseball writers who voted on the Hall of Fame, they had the biggest burr because they wouldn't let anyone become unanimous. And we're talking about the greatest names from the very first, election. From, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, Nolan Ryan. None of these were unanimous first ballot Hall of Famers until 2019 with Mo Rivera, right? That used to be my biggest pet peeve, but that has been obliterated by the football writers with this.
The only thing I'll say is this. We don't know the entire class yet. The rest of the names have not been released. There's still time to salvage this. Everyone on the face of the planet thinks Belichick should be in. All you got to do is make an exception this time. Mulligan, we're changing the bylaws this year. Belichick's going in along with everyone else that got voted in on this cycle. There's an easy way to fix this. I know we won't go down that path. It just feels like there's a way that everyone can move on from this quickly. Real quick before we get going, Super Bowl predictions. Joe, who you got?
I think it's going to be the Seahawks winning this Super Bowl. Real quick, just the team, guys. Who you got?
Seattle. Give me Seattle.
Mike?
Seahawks as well, and Jackson Smith and Jigba for MVP.
Are you going to ruin the graphic?
I'm not going to. I'm picking the Patriots. I'm tired of choosing against New England at this time of year. I have learned 6 times prior to this. Not
there goes our chance
That's
to
good
go
producing.
viral, Andrew.
That's
Thanks
good
a
producing. He didn't screw up the graphic. All right, we got more. Coming up next, it's no fence riding. We'll have a lot of fun. Stay with us.
Somehow the music doesn't get old. Welcome back to the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. It's time now for everyone except Michelle's favorite game, no fence riding. The concept is simple. More so today than usual. I've got one topic for our panel to discuss. It's up to them to decide which side of the fence they're on. No riding it or they get called out. So let it begin. The greatest challenge modern athletes face today is not brilliance, but endurance, career longevity. This recent crop of athletes faces the largest uphill climb in history to be considered one of the true greatest of all times in their respective sport. Look at Carlos Alcaraz today. Only 13 people in the history of tennis has won more titles than he has at the age of 23. He has 7. He needs to win that many majors 2.5 more times to be close to the man he beat today, Novak Djokovic. It's not just tennis. Brady and LeBron, I'll throw Ovechkin in there, are the forebearers of a long career in the big four sports, and there are countless examples elsewhere in Olympic sports as well, all while sports is becoming increasingly specialized and optimized. Mac, lead us off here.
I think longevity, with the exception maybe of basketball in certain positions in football, has never been easier because of the advances in science, medicine, physiology, nutrition, and technology have allowed these players to play at a high level, the good ones, well into their 30s and sometimes even into their early 40s. So to me, longevity now is much more attainable today than it was at any point previously in the history of any game.
Mike?
Yeah, I think longevity is the piece of this puzzle that is easy to make happen because of science, because of technology, because of research. And I think that longevity of players like a LeBron, like a Tom Brady, like so many of these players that look like they're going to play, Drew Brees played into his 40s. I think the longevity of the elite players makes brilliance harder, because you keep bumping your head against this. How many guys played their whole career thinking, surely Tom Brady's going to retire at some point and I'm going to get to win a Super Bowl? The entire AFC bumped up against that ceiling forever because Tom Brady wouldn't go away. I think the longevity makes finding that brilliance harder. And I think your example of Alcaraz is a really good one as well. He's done a really nice job of pushing through that ceiling and beating some of these guys like Novak Djokovic that have been around forever. But I think you're going to continue to see that storyline play out in this league. It's going to be 5 or 6 years from now, and we're going to be talking about Patrick Mahomes and how long is this guy going to be able to go? Is he going to play till 45? Is he going to play till 48? Is he going to push past what Brady did? We're going to keep having these conversations, and it's going to make something hard. It's going to make it harder for somebody like a Drake May or some of these young guys that are just coming up through to push through and show their brilliance.
Joe?
I do think it's an interesting concept, but I do think this. I think that athletes are becoming more mature in terms of understanding what it takes to get the most out of their body now more than ever. Because I feel like part of that was once you become a professional, you get around these pros and you kind of learn that stuff. I think as we go along and sports science becomes more prevalent, it's getting to these players at a younger age, and it might at least give them an opportunity. The bar is still ridiculously high, and I think about it from the lens of Scottie Scheffler, trying to go after Tiger.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so incredibly difficult, and he's such a hot point right now, ripping off 20 tournament wins in 4 years, but he's still got so far to go when it comes to the majors. But I do think the advancements of the sports science, while saying, yeah, it's got to be longevity, that's just part of it, but that's baked into the cake now as well.
Right.
So I think the sports as a whole, it's all evolved, and I still think it's just as difficult. And think about this. Think about how long they talked about Babe Ruth being the greatest, right?
Yeah.
So this is what it is.
Well, and you
right?
want to talk about sports science, try and work with Babe Ruth and what he was eating and drinking prior to games
and
see where you get. That's all I'm saying.
That may have had something to do with who was playing back then.
No,
yes,
absolutely,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yes.
But that's part of the discussion here. Mac and Mike, thanks so much for making the time on this Sunday. We really appreciate it. Joe's final take coming up next.
Great stuff, guys.
Was it difficult to get a word in edgewise during the Mavs talk? So I just want to say I am one of the people that did not know Mark Aguirre was based in Dallas earlier on. I knew him from the Pistons runs, but to know that he was part of a Western Conference final run and everything with the Mavericks, it was really cool getting in touch with that history. I was born in '92, so I was born after all that stuff happened. Just saying, Joe.
And that made it another reason why it was a cool night. Those younger generations getting a feel for what Mark meant. Great stuff.
Still happy to be part of the younger generation. Joe's final take.
The Pro Football Hall of Fame voters made this too easy. Change needs to happen immediately when you have complete and utter systemic failure, the likes of which keeps the GOAT of coaching out of the Hall of Fame. It needs to change immediately. What's next? Is Tom Brady not going to make it because of Deflategate? Ridiculous. Balderdash. Bullocks, as Mike said earlier in the show. That needs to change right away. And why all of a sudden has that word come into the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show lexicon?
I don't know, man. I did break out the thesaurus. Let's get all the old English words in here. Ye old Ultimate Dallas Sports Show.
I think it's because it has a B and an S in it. There you go.
Oh, my God.
That's a look at the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great week.
This has been the Ultimate Dallas Sports Show, sponsored by your North Texas Chevy dealers. Together, let's drive.